Okay, so while the lye is out there cooling down, because I went off camera, I went ahead and mixed that up. We're gonna mix our hard oils, and we've got coconut oil, we've got our beeswax, and we've got lard. And the way I do it is I put it all into the pot that I'm gonna melt them in, and measure them out one at a time, starting with the soap starting with the oil that is the most. In this case, it's going to be lard. So we're gonna go ahead and start with that, and then I'll work all the way down to the beeswax because that's the least. So first thing is put the pot that's I'm going to use to melt it with on the scale. I'll tear that out so it's zeroed out, and then I'll go ahead and start putting in measure in the first oil. So I'm going to put in lard.
Charlie.
A little bit too much. A little bit too much again. Okay, that's good. So then I'm ready to put in the next oil. In this case, it's going to be coconut oil. I'll tear this out again. Okay, and the last hard oil that we're going to have to melt is going to be the beeswax from our local beehives that we have here. And I already cut that and measured that out, so I'll throw that in. Okay, so now I'm going to move this over to the stove and we'll get it melted, and while that's doing that, we're going to go ahead and start with our soft oil, so we'll be right back. Okay, so now that the hard oils are on the stove and they're starting to melt, I'm going to go ahead and pour our soft oils into our basin. I use a crock pot insert that I got from the thrift store here locally. So go ahead and put that on the scale, and then you want to tear that out. Bring that to 0. And then you want to measure out your oils. And so again, I'm going to use this olive oil. And you want to do a slow pour, at least for me. I don't want to overshoot this one. It's hard to get it back in the bottle. And I overshot it a little bit, so let me go ahead and put some of that back.
Hold on, let me see.
All right, that's perfect. So one of the things that I like to do is, now that I've measured the olive oil out, I'll take a little bit out of it and I'll put it to the side. It doesn't really matter how much, you kind of eyeball it, and you kind of get the feel for it after you do a few. And what this oil's for is mixing the micas in. Rather than putting just powdered color in, I'll take a little bit of this oil and mix it in with each of the colors that we measure out, and that'll wet the mica before we actually mix it into the soap batter. And so that allows you to not have little speckles or clumps of color, because the color's already well mixed into some oil. And not to mess up the ratios, I just use some of the oil that we just measured out. So now the hard oils have melted. It looks like this. And now I'm going to pour them into the olive oil. Let me go get my spatula. And I like to scrape out all of it that I can. Then you want to get the temperature of that. So right now we're at about 169 Fahrenheit, 168. We want to wait until this drops to about below 120. So we'll be back. Okay, so the last thing we really need to measure out is going to be our fragrance. And we're using Energy by Brambleberry.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go ahead and start scale and put my container, tear that out to 0. And put that aside until we need it.